Welcome to the show. I'm very excited to have Tim Donnelly on today, founder, partner of the Sea.Hear.Now Festival here in Asbury Park, producer of the Asbury Park Music and Film Festival. Tim, thanks for coming on the show, man.
No problem, Mike. No problem. Happy to be here, man.
You've had some work done.
Yeah.
Nose, chin. What'd you have done?
Yeah, I had lip injections because I've never had an upper lip, and I got my scars on my. No, I had some a knee reconstruction, an ACL reconstruction on my left knee, and neck surgery to solve a cervical issue that I didn't know I had until my arm went numb, and then it was like all hands on deck, kind of like an emergency situation. So, but yeah, I'm starting to heal up from that, and the leg's getting back to normal, and the world has opened up, and it's 90 degrees out. So, here we go.
Once you get nerve impingement, and I hope none of you listening have had nerve impingement, it's the scariest fucking thing ever, and you realize how fragile your body can be, and just how fragile the nervous system is, and the things around it that are protecting it once they erode or get fucked up in some way. And in your case, things were, explain that again, something was growing?
So my C6 grew a bone spur and attached itself to my C7, which in turn, with the weight of it, started to pull itself off of my spinal cord, basically. And because it was moving a little bit, it was resting on the nerve, on the C7 nerve. So I had pain shooting basically from my pecs all the way down the back of my arm through my elbow to where my pointer finger became numb. And then my arm eventually went numb, and I had the worst pain in my shoulder. So for the past 10 years, I don't know, man, every year and a half, I'd get like, man, my shoulder hurts, man. What is the deal with my shoulder? How come I can't, I'd go to massage therapy, I'd go to acupuncture, and then it would just go away. And then this time during the rehab for the knee, I was sitting on the couch one day, because that's what I was doing a lot of. And I was like, oh my God, my shoulder, I haven't done anything. What's going on? And then that's how it started. And long story short, I had to get another surgery at the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York City. And when I met with the neurologist, she basically let me know, like, if I don't get this done, what was going to happen to me. And after she had that conversation with me, I was like, okay, we're going for it. And so, yeah, I'm 6 weeks out today from that. So I got the brace off last week. So here we are.
I'm glad you're pulling through it.
Yeah.
You referred to it as surfer's neck. And, as I was looking through your bio, by the way, props to you, first person who's ever sent me a bio prior to coming on the show.
Right.
It's fascinating. It's well written. And what I learned, I'm like, oh, of course it's well written. You're a writer, copy editor. You've done all these things, and your first gigs with the Surfrider Foundation. So it was that was your entree into the adult world, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, it was my entree into into my first job out of college. Really, it was. I learned a lot because I was a Jersey kid in California with a lot of ideas and a lot of energy, and that's a nightmare to Californians too. That kind of energy and attitude. And
dude, it's so true. I have friends who moved out there to run businesses, and people are like, okay, do it.
Yeah. But I was able to get a lot of cool stuff done. And honestly, like some of those same people that I worked with back in the day for Surfrider in the 90s, they run the organization today in California. They're coming to Sea.Hear.Now, like the three people that I have known for over like 30 years of my life. So it's just, the kid who used to answer the telephone at Surfrider is the executive director now. How awesome is that?
That's how you want it.
It's, so they're my friends, they're my family. I firmly believe in what Surfrider Foundation does across the world. But yeah, that was my first job, which led me to work on the first Lollapalooza tour, which was the thing that changed my life, to be honest with you. But
that's the first Lollapalooza I couldn't go to. I had a family event, and my buddy Dave Golick, shout out to Dave, he comes back with a broken arm, and he was like, fucking ministry, bro. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, we were there at the second one.
Yeah.
And there were so many highlights.
Yeah.
Probably the Heat was
Yeah.
one of the highlights.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Rage Against the Machine opens the big stage.
Yeah.
You know, it went from like, oh, let's just find our spot to,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'd never seen anything on that scale. That concert was amazing. How'd you get plugged into Lollapalooza?
So when I was working at Surfrider, we got a phone call from the festival organizer saying that Perry Farrell wanted Surfrider Foundation to go out and tour, to go out on the road as part of a nonprofit tent that they were having. They were having like political organizations, they were having free speech organizations, they were having voter registration, and they wanted, and Surfrider was the handpicked environmental group to go out on the road. And so I had to explain to these people, like, you know, they weren't like dorks, but they're book people. They were kind of scientists, environmentalists. And I was like, listen, if we do this and we get in with this, this is going to open up this organization to so many people across the country. And it's going to really just bring up the profile, because I was like, this tour is going to change everything. Because James Dixon was the biggest band in the world in my life. They were the biggest band in the world in my life, right? And Henry Rollins was huge in seeing Rollins around, because of the fact that the Rollins band came through City Gardens like once every 4 months back
Dude,
then.
Let's talk about City Gardens. That was the best place ever. The most dangerous club in America.
Yeah, that place and the Loop Lounge in Passaic and Lemoore in Brooklyn. They're rank up there at the top 3 sketchiest. And of course the Fast Lane in the early 90s too. There was that,
City Gardens, there was no place to run to.
There was
that
no
was
place
the
to
difference.
run to, yeah.
If you were running away from that club, it was only going to get worse for you.
Oh yeah, it was going to get worse. It was going to get worse.
It's like Calhoun Street.
Calhoun Street, exactly.
Oh my
exactly.
God.
But yeah, so going out on Lolla, being part of that completely changed. I'd say it changed my life, because it was back then, it was literally a gathering of the tribes, right? And because, you had MTV, yeah, but you had, the classic rock shit was dying off, and it was kind of like the like our generation's kind of like the birth of like alternative rock, college rock. So when I was in college, that was a major part of my life, the Pixies and the Replacements and going to Maxwell's and going to the Green Parrot.
Neptune.
Green Parrot, Route 33 Neptune, which is now part of Jersey Shore Medical Center parking lot. I saw the fucking 9 Inch Nails in that room, dude. So
yeah.
So being just a part of that, I knew how big it was going to be, and then so basically I drove in a car and went from show to show, and met people along the way who would join up and meet me in certain regions like North Carolina or New Jersey or New England or whatever, and then I would take the money raised from that show, from stickers or whatever, and throw it in my gas tank and buy literally buy a sandwich and just go to the next stop, and that's how I used a Grateful Dead parking lot model on how to get me from show to show on Lollapalooza. And it, so about a week into it, by the time we got to Jersey, I had like a laminate and like
Stanhope.
By the time we got to Stanhope, man, and all my Jersey boys were there, all the brothers were there, and it was like surfers from Sandy Hook to Long Beach Island, and everybody knew each other, and it was just like this mass gathering of, you had the surf culture, surf skate culture, and you had the goths, and you had the art kids, and you had just people who, you had metalheads because of Jane's and what they stood for in ministry, for Christ's sake. It was just fucking body count.
Tool?
No, that was the second. I'm talking the first year.
Oh.
But like Ice-T's Body Count.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, stuff was, and Susie and the Banshees. So it was like, and Rollins Band and ministry. Fuck, it was crazy. So when we got to Stanhope, and this was the most amazing thing. It rained all day. We did 2 shows in Stanhope. Second show, it rained all fucking day. It was it was just mud everywhere, dude. Everybody had mud everywhere. James comes out, Perry comes out, and he raises his arms as the rain's coming down, and it fucking stopped. Exactly. It was one of the greatest sets I've ever seen in my life. It is hands down one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life.
I hope they went into stop.
Yeah, whatever it was, it may have been. I think they may have even opened up the show with that. Yeah, for sure, because they were doing the same show almost every night then. But yeah. So Lollapalooza, that was the thing that, like, you know. Then the second year, it was the Chili Peppers were headlining, and Pearl Jam was on that bill, and Soundgarden was on that bill, and you know, became friends with the Pearl Jam guys on that run. And here we are, 30 years later.
Around this time is also when you were put there as a representative for Ocean Awareness, Surfrider Foundation. You were an ambassador, really.
Yeah.
And that was around that time. So I was in high school at this time. That's kind of when I first remember hearing even just conversations, advertisements, T-shirts and hats around the cause.
Yeah.
I remember I don't know how I probably snuck in, but the Belmar Parade, the Clean Ocean Action had its own float.
Yeah.
Maybe my high school got tapped to do that. We got T-shirts for it. And there was a lot of awareness around that time. Why was the awareness kicking in this time in the early 90s? Like,
so basically coming out of the late 80s, right? So I grew up in Toms River, right? So I graduated from Toms River North, which encompasses the land that would be considered the Ciba-Geigy biochemical tool and die chemical plant. Okay. So they polluted the groundwater and the drinking water out there, and they had a pipeline where they were taking that shit and that wastewater, that toxic wastewater, and they were pumping it in these underground pipelines clear across Toms River, clear across the Barnegat Bay, underneath everything, and discharging it into the ocean. Okay. And so Greenpeace came to town when I was a junior in high school. And they posted up at my friend's oceanfront shack in Lavalette. That's back when they literally had oceanfront shacks in Lavalette. Very small houses on the beach. And Greenpeace posted up there, and I went over there, and, you know, I kind of got radicalized, basically. Like, you know, meeting these kind of, like, really smart, progressive hippies, and there was a Aussie in there, and you know, talking to me about, you know, what it meant for this corporation to do, you know, to pollute the water like that, and how they had bought out the whole town and the mayor and the council and all this shit, right? So going into my senior year in high school, kids that I were, you know, going to school with were starting to die, like fucking die of childhood cancer and leukemia, and you know, way high cases of cystic fibrosis and shit, like bad diseases, and they were dying like left and right. I probably went to 7 funerals when I was in fucking high school of kids dying with cancer, right? That pissed me off, right? And then in high school, Ciba-Geigy wanted to buy us a new scoreboard for the fucking football stadium with, like, you know, courtesy of Ciba-Geigy. And I went fucking off. Like, I was working on the school newspaper, and I got thrown off the school newspaper. I got suspended from school. I called every one of them a bunch of hypocrites, a bunch of fucking liars. I had people calling my old man saying, shut your kid up. Like, all that kind of small town bullshit. And my old man, you know, God bless him, basically told these people to go fuck themselves. You know, so yeah, so that for me, man, that's how it happened with the environmentalism, because it hit close to home. And then I grew up by the Barnegat Bay, and then saw that go from like one of the most beautiful, abundant bodies of water in America to like what it is now, you know. So I saw that whole change, and I saw what development did to Toms River and to Ocean County. And so that's kind of like where I got my mindset. But the thing was, I wasn't the only one. It was like, if you grew up in Toms River, or you grew up by the water in that time frame, you kind of had the same thing, because that was also during the time when they were dumping garbage in the ocean. That's when syringes and needles and shit were washing up on the beach, right? So it was really bad. So that's kind of how it happened for me. You know, it's pretty amazing how the ocean dumping stopped and how clean the water got around here. right? Especially the ocean, how clean it really can be at certain times. Granted, some days it's terrible. You know, Asbury Park has these lakes that funnel into the ocean, and they started out as streams out in, like, you know, let's talk like going out by Shark River and all those lawns and all that runoff, and it comes into here and it washes out at, like, you know, behind a casino, which we call the mud hole, because when they open up that pipe, literally can bring up mud from the bottom and just all kinds of nasty shit into the ocean. But, you know, now it seems that the water's gotten much cleaner, which is good. And I think people's awareness is, I think they're way more aware. And I think that, like, publicly shaming litter bugs is a great fucking thing, especially on the beach. Or if you see somebody, who cares? You're an asshole if you do that. It's 2021. Like, are you kidding me? So that's kind of like where that came from. And then morphed into Surfrider, and then going on the road with Lolla, and then 1992, it was an election year, and then rolling around with the guys from Rock the Vote that summer also was very enlightening. So understanding the political process and all that other stuff from there. But,
and
yeah.
what was the goal of Rock the Vote? Was that simply to sign people, register?
That was register to vote. That was the first massive, the motor voter, which, like, you're automatically registered to vote with your driver's license. That was their whole thing. But yeah, that was their first, you know, that was the Clinton Gore election. And that was, you know, when Gen X kind of rallied around that whole thing, and everybody registered to vote.
That's interesting. It sounds like if Surfrider didn't place you on Lolla, it sounds like you could have easily had a political trajectory.
Probably not. Probably not. I don't know. You know, I worked in the surf industry too after that for a little while, and, you know, and that was super creative. And
you were the music editor for Surfing
I was
Magazine?
the music editor at Surfing Magazine for a long time, and you know, I was a writer at heart too the whole time. And you know, that Surfrider stuff and the Lollapalooza stuff and my writing actually led to me to get a job at MTV in 1993. And that was another trajectory that I didn't think I was going to take. But, you know, working there, writing the VJ segments, like writing the words that were coming out of Adam Curry's mouth and Bill Bellamy and Kennedy and Pinfield, you know, that was like where that led to.
Curry, the Podfather.
Adam Curry, dude.
He's the Podfather, isn't he?
Let's talk about Adam Curry and how fucking smart that guy is.
I just made the connection that dude, he's
beyond
that guy.
He's that guy. But he was also AdamCurry.com guy. He knew this was going to happen. He bought all these domain names. He probably made millions off of that. ABC.com, NBC.com, CBS.com, Fox.com.
Way ahead of his time.
Way ahead of his time. He was ahead of his time in everything. And one of the nicest, most professional people I've ever met and worked with.
A lot of those people at MTV. For those of you watching, there was a station called MTV that played music videos. There was something, music videos were actually on TV, and there were all sorts of programs. And MTV, correct me if I'm wrong, sort of really started reality television as we know it.
With the Real World.
With the Real World.
Yeah, and I was working there. I was working at MTV during that time too, when the Real World launched.
Was that fucking bizarre as hell?
Yeah, well, it was, you know, it was gripping television. And then, like, you know, I was part of the team that, oh man, came up with this thing at the MTV Beach House in '98 in Seaside, where it was called Seaside Undercover, where we followed these Guidos around, right, and to like different places around the shore. That was like, can you imagine working in MTV and then having the MTV Beach House basically in your hometown?
No.
Yeah.
They co-opted the term Jersey Shore. We couldn't start. It's only being used now in the last 10, 15 years. It's okay to say it again.
It's worse. So it was like, it was the best summer of my life, but it was the worst summer of my life also too. Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, it was pretty crazy.
How receptive was the town to those productions?
Then it was like, then it was fine because it was still, because we made Seaside Heights look amazing, right? But, you know, there was, MTV showed up and blah, blah, the other thing. That was just their way of disguising kind of like their racism, to be honest with you. Because it was like, oh, MTV brought this kind of element coming here. It's like, well, what are you getting at? Like, what teenagers? Like, what are you talking? What explain to me what you're getting at here? Like, what? I don't understand. What do you mean? It's not like so what? They're bringing people here with money. It's weird. It's a weird dynamic down there, especially during that time. It's not as much like that there now, but it was super weird. I mean, I don't think anybody knew how successful it was going to be and how big the ratings were too back then for the Beach House. And I produced that Say What karaoke show where I had to go around to all the karaoke bars in the Jersey Shore and find these people to go on TV. Dude, like it was that part was insane.
Karaoke talent scout.
Karaoke talent scout.
This is why I don't go south of Manasquan.
The bowling alley on Route 88 on the Lakewood Point Pleasant border, Bricktown border right there on a hot Wednesday night.
That's where it's at.
Yeah, I found a 300-pound white guy Michael Jackson impersonator, and it was pretty special.
That makes for good television.
It made for great fucking television.
So I need to correct myself. I'm like, oh, you could have easily been a politician. And now I'm like, you could have easily gone in some other interesting direction.
Yeah.
So, I get that you're a free thinker, and at the end of the day, you have things that you care about, and you don't care what might crumble in your life to make that point. And I think that's cool as hell.
Yeah.
I personally am that type of person. My father gave me that aesthetic. He's like, look, if a crowd is going this way, that's a flag. That's a red flag.
Sure. Yeah.
That's when you should start thinking.
Yeah.
And he inadvertently, taught me how to be a punk rocker, I guess.
Sure.
How did you get out of that? I feel like that was like that sucked people in to God knows what.
How did I get out of that?
How'd you get out of the Beach House MTV vibe? What was the transition?
Well, the following year, in the summer of '94, MTV.com was born. Okay, that was the year MTV.com was born, and they wanted me to go out on Lollapalooza, which I had many connections, and those people by then, 2 years doing Lollapalooza and then showing up in '93 at like half of the dates on behalf of Surfrider still. I knew those people. They were my friends. So when it came to it, and a couple of people knew what I was doing and I was working at MTV, they asked for me to be a part of it, to be the MTV representative, because at that point in time, MTV was super powerful, and none of those people wanted to play the politics of it. So I was kind of like their Homer. I was like kind of like their ace. But so basically what my job was writing like a tour diary and taking photographs with my Apple camera, dude.
What?
I had an Apple camera.
Do you still have it?
No, I had to give it back to him. An Apple camera, which basically looked like a big viewfinder. And then I had one of the first, it was kind of like I don't even know what the fuck it was. Was it a word processor? I don't think it was was it a laptop?
I didn't get a computer till probably about 95, 96. So we're joking around, but you were on the cutting edge.
Yeah. So
a lot of stuff.
So I mean, they had it like they had it like in their heads that like I was going to be able to send send digitally, that I was going to be able to email this shit back, right? But as soon as we got out of we went past Washington D.C., there was no connectivity anywhere. It was fucking nothing. Like I got to Houston and it was like, I remember going to being in New Orleans and there ain't no such thing as the internet in Louisiana right now.
You needed the telephone lines.
I needed the telephone lines to connect, and I would have to connect through AOL, and then I would have to send the email through AOL to somebody at MTV. But that just got to be so incredibly frustrating that I would do 2 steps at a time, 2 shows at a time, throw it on a disc and overnight it, because it just wasn't becoming possible. So I would throw it on a floppy disk and send it back to New York, and then they would post it.
How long were you doing this?
That was the entire summer of 1994. So that Lollapalooza tour was a tour that Nirvana was supposed to headline.
He passed away.
He passed away in April of that year.
That's right.
And so it was the Smashing Pumpkins, it was the Beastie Boys, it was the Breeders, it was George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic, it was Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, it was A Tribe Called Quest, and Green Day.
Nirvana, what a special band. I was so excited to see them. That was the reason I bought a ticket that year. Sure.
Yeah. And I don't think hardly anybody knows this. East of the Mississippi, the Jersey Shore, Matt Pinfield at FM 106.3 was the first person east of the Mississippi River to play Nirvana on the radio, on a commercial radio station.
It's not surprising at all.
Yeah.
Matt Pinfield introduced everyone to everything.
Yeah. He's my brother. I love him to death. And I remember where I was when I first heard Teen Spirit. I was on the fucking Parkway, and it was between Middletown and Red Bank on southbound. I was like, "What the fuck is this?"
That was a really special time.
And that was back in the day where you could come through the Asbury Toll Plaza and there used to be payphones on the left, the bank of payphones.
That's right.
So you could pull over in your car and hop on the phone and make a call.
That's where all the phones were.
That's where all the phone were. So you pull up, right? And I'm like, I still know the phone number. 493-2002.
Oh my God.
Right? So I'd call the phone number, it'd be like Rich Robinson or Chopper or Matt or Bart or Carrie Nolan or Loretta, like all these people. Like, hey, what was that you played? It was like, oh, this band called Nirvana. Well, fucking play it again, right? And that must have been like, I don't know, September or something. And then by like Halloween, I remember like this raging house party we had, and that fucking thing just like, so we were like, play that again, play that again, play that again. And it was like a Beatles kind of moment. And that was like, and we were into James Addiction. We had seen the Chili Peppers by then, like, but this was defining, you know.
It felt different. It felt very distilled to whatever it was,
right.
Very pure. So I DJ'd a Halloween party that year.
Right.
I popped that in. Party was over. Dude went through the wall.
Sure, I believe it.
Went through a wall.
Sure.
And then the person who owned the house was like, "Oh my God, my dad!" And everyone runs away.
Yeah.
So that song ended the Halloween party.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
That was a special
time.
Yeah, that was the greatest Halloween party ever at Seaside Park, right next to the police station too. Yeah. Fuckers.
Did you ever get to see Nirvana?
Yeah, I saw him at the New York Armory. I guess it was the summer of '93. I think summer of '93. I think at the Armory uptown. Yeah.
Do you remember what that was like?
Yeah, it was really hot. It was really sweaty. It was violent, and they were good, but I don't know how into it he was. You know what I mean? There was a little it felt like there was a little disconnect there, but you know.
Yeah, that's part of his story.
Yeah, it was part of his story.
Right, sort of not connecting to that part of their success.
I mean, the more popular they got, the fucking less he cared. It was like one of those things that, you know, don't forget back in the day, like if you were successful, people wanted nothing to do with you if you came from that fucking scene. You know, it was like that's the, you know. And I think if you were to talk to people who were from that era of like, you know, fucking sellout and whatever else and whatever kind of that meant and the ethos of that and staying pure to your art and crossing over from, you know, to being commercial, right? It was a fucking sin to be commercial at one point coming out of that scene.
Can you imagine that in the context of today?
Yeah.
It's like laughable.
It's laughable.
But that was a thing, folks.
That was a thing.
That was a thing.
That was a
for
fucking
artists.
thing. You know, that was the counterculture way of thinking. And to this day, man, it still creeps up in the back of my head, right? So, but I use that kind of ethos to check my motivation and what are my motives. Are my motives pure? Are my motives fucking just money? Because if your motives is just money, then something's going to go fucking really wrong. Like, you've got to have like your belief system in check and belief in what you want to do and belief in your idea. The money's going to come or it's not, right? But if it's just solely for money or solely, you know, hey, I'm gonna write this song and fucking get 4 billion spins on Spotify and get a fucking deal with some advertising. No, man. So, you know, that was what's weird. But, you know, it kind of like, you know, that also to me, so looking at bands that are kind of like peers in that level as far as like age group. So I look at how they've aged. Chili Peppers have aged pretty well, right? They've aged pretty well. Pearl Jam guys have aged pretty well. Dave Grohl and those guys have aged pretty well. Billy Corgan coming back from like kind of self-imposed hiatus, his voice, his band, James Ehod, Jimmy Chamberlain, they've aged pretty well. Everybody else is fucking dead. Chris Cornell's dead. Our friend Shannon Hoon's dead. Bradley Knoll from Sublime, who was going to be fucking monster. They had that one record, man, and that record is still played to this day over and over. If they had a shot at another record, who knows what would have happened with those guys. You know, he was a buddy. He's dead. Cobain, dead. So a lot of those guys, the pressure of Lane Staley, fuck, man. Fuck, right? Dead.
That guy's voice. They headline. They were
co-headliner
or the headliner that year.
They were headliner. So, you know, I've got a crazy funny story. But it's like, so those guys couldn't handle that shit, right? And they, you know, they couldn't handle it. It was this big thing. Now, looking back on it, man, like almost 30 years of, wow, I get it. And then, like, you know, hip-hop was the same way for that, too. It felt really pure and really from the street and the meaning of it. And then Tupac and Biggie are dead. And then fucking here comes Puff Daddy and all that shiny shit. There was no more, you know, like, De La Soul and Public Enemy out of the limelight and really thoughtful hip-hop and uplifting hip-hop, you know. Yeah, I don't want to sound like an old man, but shit kind of changed in that 94, 95, 96 kind of thing, you know. It's like, you know, I kind of say after that Lollapalooza or, you know, after Cobain blew his head off, it, you know, it all kind of radically changed in my eyes, you know.
You brought up a good point about this concept of selling out and how it sounds like we have very similar sort of vibe. And especially maybe when we were younger too, just that was always in the back of your head. It kind of acted like a compass,
sure,
in a way. And for me, yes, it was a compass, but it was beautiful in a way because it allowed you to always keep an eye on the artists and the people that you really respected. Mm-hmm. It was almost like, well, what would they think? It was almost like a what would Jesus do kind of thing, maybe for Christians.
Sure.
It was that all the time.
Sure.
What would this artist do?
Sure.
I mean, even back then, it was so rigid in a way that I know, like playing, and I have no problem with this, but like playing cover songs and covering tunes is a huge deal now. And some people are broke. They break that way.
Sure.
Back in the day, like you played a cover, people were like, what the fuck? You'll get tossed off stage,
yeah.
Even during a sound check.
Right.
You're like, what the fuck are you doing playing that song?
Right. And now if you don't have 2 covers in your set, you're fucked.
And not that that's right or wrong or anything, but I think for a lot of people, I was definitely one of them. It provided a finely tuned compass about setting a goal, staying true to it, and knowing that this could go either way, and I'm going to be okay either way because I'm connected to my peers. I feel like I know what good art and what good people are, and I've made relationships with these people. They're not going to let me sink. We're going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
I wish I could have seen Nirvana.
Yeah. So, but here I am, like, walking that delicate line of, like, keeping my punk rock ethos and working at MTV.com. Right? So, but I was able to gain trust with the bands because of who I am and because we were kind of all cut from the same cloth at that point in time, right? So what was underground in ours became the mainstream. And so how was that ride up? So, you know, that enabled me to play basketball with the Beastie Boys and Billy Corgan and you know, kind of roll around with the Breeders and have fun and, you know, rock and roll summer camp you know, for four solid summers. But
Corgan's a tall dude, isn't he?
dude, he dunked on me.
You don't want to post up
Nah,
on
he did,
Billy
man.
Corgan.
Yeah, I can't wait to retell him the story. So this was probably the last game that happened because the games were getting really intense. Okay. It was the Beastie Boys, their crew, Evan Bernard, who was part of the Beastie Boys crew, who's still a buddy today, Ricky Powell, who just passed away. He was their concierge / photographer. So Ricky would just be like underneath the hoop because it was like a fold up hoop that they would put on their tour bus, and then they would like a director set and bring it out the next gig. So Ricky would be like talking shit the whole time, you know, while we were playing, and I would be like, "You gonna let this motherfucker from New Jersey come and school you? He's from fucking New Jersey," right? But like we played and I would always Adam Horowitz and I Ad Rock, I would guard Ad Rock and he would guard me, and then we'd go at it really, really fucking hard. And then the games were getting really intense, and then somebody's manager, and then Billy came and saw what was going on, and Billy played basketball in Chicago, man. If you know how to play basketball and you're from Chicago, chances are you don't suck. You know what I mean? Especially like in those like Catholic CYO leagues that he played in Chicago. Like that's like it's like Jersey Shore basketball. Like if you're good from around here, you're good.
Yeah, it's legit.
It's legit, you know, from the level of competition from your kid. So I was finally playing with the Beastie, with Ad Rock and Yauk on the same team. Billy was on the other team with Mike D, who was a fucking hack. And then hack, sharpest elbows ever. So they threw the ball to Billy. I ended up getting like switched somehow with Yauk. I got the ball on the block. He drop stepped me, playing in Doc Martens, by the way. Drop stepped me, turned around and dunked on me.
You were in the uniform.
Huh?
You didn't change out of the rock and roll uniform, not even for a basketball game.
No, he was in the rock roll uniform.
Oh, in
Docs. He was in Doc Martens. I was like I was shorts, basketball sneakers. It was fucking serious. It was fucking serious.
It wasn't serious enough, apparently.
No, it wasn't serious enough.
Maybe some
Drops at me,
Docs.
dunked on me, wearing Doc Martens.
Did you see the Jordan documentary?
Yeah, I saw every second of it.
How good was that?
I'm a Knicks fan, so it brought up a lot of painful memories for me.
It was great to watch some of that old Knicks footage.
Yeah, it was pain. Some of it was painful, guaranteed. Some of it was painful, but yeah, it was. I was at the Garden the night that he dropped 55 when he came back from retirement. He dropped 55 on the Knicks. I was there. Yeah.
How did you and the crowd treat him?
He was fucking the enemy.
No respect.
Oh, there was, because he was Michael Jordan. It's, we saw what we were saying, but we didn't dare give him a standing ovation. Nobody was friends back then, man. It was like real rivalries. It was like people used to fight in the stands and shit. It was like, you're a Knicks fan. You don't root for Michael Jordan.
That documentary was so good.
Yeah.
You talk about having a finely tuned compass.
Sure.
When you have people who are great in their own respect, looking back and like, I didn't like that guy, but damn.
Sure.
He made me way better than everyone. Still didn't like him.
Right.
But he educated me.
Well, that's
heavy.
He was a competitive prick. Everybody has one of them people in their life where,
At least one.
At
We
least
know those
one.
guys.
You know
who you are.
Dude, the dudes I grew up with they were so competitive and such, like, they would take slugs, slugs that they would find in the ground, and they would take salt, and they would bet on which one was going to disappear first. Uh-huh.
That's some old school games.
That's some old school games.
Yes, folks.
Yeah, before the
before animal rights was really
right.
Insect rights. I don't know.
Rights,
Have we gone that far yet?
I don't know yet.
I don't know. Maybe someone should start that movement.
Yeah, the competitive thing. Sometimes with me it rears its ugly head, but I try to keep that in check.
How does that ugly head and the balance of it? How does all that translate to the work you're doing in the last some odd years here in Asbury Park? So the Sea.Hear.Now Festival, the Asbury Park Music and Film Festival. How does we can get into your place in it and how it all started, but how does that mindset translate to being effective in those spaces?
I pushed, if people who know me in this town too, I had a vision of, because I came from it was weird. I came from New Orleans, and where I was living after Katrina. And I was part of working at Tipitina's, the club, and part of the Tipitina's Foundation. And after Katrina, it was basically saving New Orleans culture. It was just saving that shit, man. It was making sure that the musicians were taken care of, and, you know, protecting that world influencing scene at Tipitina's and at Preservation Hall, right? So I came from there, and then I came up here, and I heard, because Marilyn Schlossback was an old friend. We grew up, you know, down on the island, down in Seaside, and I had heard that she opened up a restaurant up here. And so I came up, and I was like, oh, shit. Whoa. Don't forget, I just left New Orleans after Katrina. The place was fucked, right? So Asbury Park in 2008 wasn't bad, you know. You know, if you were here in 2008, it wasn't great, you know. But I was like, I saw the opportunity, and I saw, like, holy shit, there could be some opportunity here. And then, you know, but when I got here, I was like, you know, I'm going to carve a name for myself. This is where I'm going to live. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do events, because all the writing stuff, like, I was making good money doing that. Then all of a sudden I woke up one day and that shit was gone. All the magazines had folded. The website stopped paying as much as they were. I wasn't making a living off of that. So I literally had to transfer all those years of connections and people that I know. So what can I do? I'm going to start doing events. And it's that 10-year model that Malcolm Gladwell talks about.
Tell us about it.
Do something that religiously for 10 years, practice, have a vision, work your ass off. 10 years later, Sea.Hear.Now is in its third year. 12 years later. So it was 10 years of getting my ass kicked and learning and creating and busting my ass and not taking no and getting in arguments with people. You know.
What are the arguments about? You as a founder and a partner, and obviously the myriad partners that you need to partner with.
Sure.
What are the big arguments, that the themes of the big arguments that come up with something at that scale? It's fucking huge.
I mean, it's with now, because, you know, we've got such a great relationship with each other. Say, for you see here now, we're like a band of brothers. We're like a band of brothers, and so now we kind of like know where we're going and what we're thinking of what the next guy's going to say. But it's just those moments of like, hey, I really think because of the people that are coming here, they're my friends and neighbors, they're going to like this. Or like, that may work in Austin, but I don't know if it's going to work in Asbury. That may work here, but I don't know if it's going to work in Asbury. So being cognizant of what this place is, and honestly too, the music fan in this part of the world is highly intelligent. They've always been highly intelligent. They've always had really good taste, and they've always supported really good music. And that's why bands love to come play this place. It's not New York where you're going to get this. Okay? It's not Philadelphia where they're doing Eagles chants in the middle of bands. Right? Like, seriously, dude. I've been at Pearl Jam shows where they're starting Eagles chants in between the encore, right? Here, it's like people they love it. And if you are good to the people here are going to love you back in a major way. And I think that's kind of like the Jersey way.
So you had to curate it in a way that you knew would be real.
Yeah.
For this area.
Sure.
And I assume the same for the Music and Film Festival.
Yeah, which was completely different, because you have the film component to it, but with somebody like Tom Bernard on my side, who's the founder of Sony Pictures Classics, one of the greatest dudes I've ever met, and, you know, super smart, and him with his Hollywood connections and know how to do that, and, you know, being able to bring Don Cheadle here when we did that Miles Davis movie, you know, was phenomenal to see what kind of impact that had in the community, and to bring Cameron Crowe here a couple years ago too was, for me selfishly, one of my favorite all-time Asbury Park moments.
That was incredible.
Because of the fact that, like, I grew up reading him. I lived Fast Times at Ridgemont High in Toms River High School North in the 80s. I connected so much there. And I had the opportunity to, for the Pearl Jam 20 film that he directed, they used, I had to give up a lot of my source materials, like a lot of interviews and articles that I'd done with the band throughout the years. So he had known my name and my work. And so when I got to meet him, it was one of those things to where, like, he gave me props and it blew me away.
I mean, I never spoke with him, but I was there when he was speaking at the Paramount.
Yeah.
He's so unassuming. So humble. He could be mistaken for the guy who's the assistant of the guy.
Dude.
I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and I had to say something to him. I always thought, like, if I ever see Cameron Crowe, I'm going to ask him for my $10 back for Vanilla Sky.
Why you gotta hate on Vanilla Sky?
I fucking hate that movie, right? So
Tom Cruise.
Here he is, standing in front of me, standing in the flesh. All I do is talk shit if I ever meet him. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm like, hey man, got $10 for me so I get back from Vanilla Sky? He started laughing so hard, and he basically told me that movie Elizabethtown that he followed up with him after that was set in Kentucky, he basically told me that he's never allowed in the state of Kentucky again.
That's what he gets for having Tom Cruise too. How dare he?
But I mean, so the film festival is a different animal because too the film festival is not for profit, also. So it benefits the Asbury Park Music and Film, the Asbury Park Music Foundation, right? So it's a kind of a different mindset of, like, so we're able to tie in bringing in Wyclef to play the Stone Pony, right? So our friend Pete, who was the executive producing that year, was able to bring in Wyclef. And so Wyclef worked with the kids downstairs. What's that room downstairs?
Yeah, the APMF room.
The APMF room. And that's where he met Giovanni, right?
Special kid.
So this kid from the West Side, who's Haitian, and Wyclef doesn't know this kid is Haitian until the kid's mother comes to pick him up, right? I don't know if you were there in the hallway. When Wyclef realizes that this little boy is Haitian, his mother's Haitian, and Wyclef in the Haitian community is a king. He's the king. He's more popular than the president of Haiti, right? So this kid is so fucking talented. He's so talented. He's like remixing. Wyclef's exact words are, I'm paying people $10,000 an hour to come up with a remix, and you just did it in 25 minutes, and you're 12 years old. That's how much talent he thought that he had. So being able to see that exchange between the three of them, the light bulb go off in Wyclef, the love that he gave this child, the child receiving that love and taking that talent and realizing that kid is such a, I hope he's doing good, because I haven't seen him in, since the, pandemic, but what a talent. And being able to see that and foster that. And then Wyclef bringing the kid up on stage at Stone Pony later that night was just like, you got to be kidding me.
I see Giovanni around the halls sometimes, not since pre-pandemic, so I also haven't seen him in a little over a year. And aside from the story that you're telling and all the talent that he possesses, that's a little gentleman.
Yeah.
Too. You don't see a lot of little gentlemen.
Yeah. What a sweet kid.
You're like, just dressed well,
yeah.
good posture,
yeah.
looking you in the eye, manners out the yin yang.
Well, his mom would smack him upside the head if he didn't.
But it just really shows, man. What a powerhouse combination. Because, sometimes great manners and a ton of self-respect aren't always synonymous with insane talent.
Sure.
They're not always in bed together.
Yeah.
And it comes for a lot of people. But to see it in this little package, and a local, Asbury Park kid.
Right. Yeah, so speaking of local Asbury Park kid, with the film festival, being able to bring Danny DeVito home, dude, and have a career retrospective of Danny DeVito and him telling stories about growing up here and telling stories about his career and me being able to, and I had some, some alone time with him, and just how magnanimous of a person and a personality he is, and his true connection to this place too, with the fellas that he grew up with in this town. They're still tight. They're still thick as thieves, because I got to meet all those guys.
He still has his crew.
He still has his crew here, and that's amazing. And he's one of a kind, and he's just I'm just so happy that he's ours, because he's such a treasure. I mean, treasure to me and anybody who's ever got the opportunity to work with him. And yeah, he's special.
What a great actor.
Real. It's real. I mean, I'm not going to get into a situation that I had to take care of, but how he reacted was how my dad would have reacted, how anybody close to me, how I grew up, how they would reacted to the situation. And I was just all right, this guy's the fucking best.
Is he still local?
No, he lives in Los Angeles. Danny DeVito's living in Malibu. Time of his life. But yeah. But just knowing the stories that he would tell me about, sneaking into the Paramount because he was so little, and he was a guy sneaking in through windows and coming around and opened up the side doors, and his friends would come in and steal money off the bar and shit. Yeah, it was great.
The Asbury Park Film and Music and Film Festival had a couple just really interesting moments for me. I really thought one of the highlights, I guess it was the last one, so 2 years ago, was the David Crosby film.
Yeah.
And just as impactful as the film, if not more, the Q&A.
Yeah.
Afterwards, and he seemed to be a person who was extremely reflective and at peace with the fact that he was generally an asshole most of his life and in his career. What was going on there? I was blown away.
Wow, right?
I'm sure you got to speak with him. Was that a thing? Was he putting on a thing?
No, it was kind of the Make Amends tour, you know what I mean? By that, I don't know. I thought that movie was incredibly honest. I thought that his if you're I listened to Mark Maron's interview with Jackson Browne last week, right? And Mark Maron was just talking about they were talking about that whole Laurel Canyon scene in Los Angeles in the early 70s, and Mark Maron was it's if you were to get a bunch of guys together, it'd be like you and Crosby, and he goes, no, Crosby would probably be the only person I don't talk to. And it was oh shit.
It seems like he ostracized every single human being in his life, and he was upfront about it, looking it square in the face.
Yeah.
Maybe because at his age,
I don't know, man. It's he was the first guy, to get the liver transplant and continue to drink and use hard drugs after getting a new liver, and oh my God, it's fucking pretty ballsy,
Well, that was a special. I just thought that was a really special.
Yeah, that was special. It was weird. It was completely weird because it was just me and him side stage, and just just watching how he was dealing with going out there. It was weird.
Was he comfortable?
I wouldn't say comfortable. He wasn't a jerk, which was nice. He was nice.
He came off as comfortable.
Yeah,
I think it made for a good presentation.
Yeah.
But there were lots of weird moments.
Yeah, I think maybe the 8 vape hits of Northern California's finest gold probably helped him feel comfortable before he sat down.
Dude, let's be honest. Sometimes you need to tune up.
Yeah. No, he was good. Yeah.
The Jacob Dylan.
Yeah.
That was okay. So to me, that was probably one of the more awkward and strange. Just there were a couple back and forths with him. The Laurel Canyon film.
Yeah.
Watched that. Okay, great. And right off the bat, someone asks a question, and it's about his dad, who's Bob Dylan, as you may know, and I was really sort of surprised at how like sharply he was like clearly does not want to talk about his dad. And I thought it was interesting because in the film, all of those people that he was representing and shining a light on and painting a picture of a scene were because he was connected to that because of his father.
Sure.
And the first question out of the gate, something about Bob Dylan, and I don't remember what he said, but it was just like suddenly the temperature in the room just went, oh.
It got really cold.
And then
really
the next
fast.
person's like, hey, how come there's not a lot of women represented in the film? And then the temperature fucking went sub-zero, and it was just, what was going on there? I mean, you were right there.
I was right there.
That seemed, by the way, to get cut fucking short. That Q&A session.
Yeah, I was dealing with getting Cat Power down to the wings, I think, during that time. And then I remember coming down the stairs from the Paramount back to the stage, and walking back to the stage, going, "Ooh, feels a little different in here." And then I remember saying to Eddie Bernard, and he's just Eddie Bernard's he works with it. It's Tom's son, and Eddie basically brought this project to the festival. I just looked over at him, and he just rolled his eyes, and I was like, "You're right." He goes, "Oh, Jersey," and I was like, "Oh, you know what happened?" But once they started playing music, it was fine.
100%.
It was fine, and Jacob was totally cool after that, and he was totally cool, and he's good friends with Brian Fallon, and Brian was there, and you know that was just nice to see, and you know, but yeah, you know, nothing like Jersey people too. Don't ask them to do something, and what's the first thing they do?
I thought he'd be used to those types of questions. By the way, I thought he might have a.
Yeah, but if you've been answering that same question and you're 50 years old, and your dad's Bob Dylan.
He might have needed,
you know,
he might have needed the vape pen.
Yes, you know,
maybe if I ever meet him, hey man.
Sorry about Asbury.
So, what was it like? You and I were supposed to have this conversation, 2-ish months ago.
Yeah.
So forget all the surgeries,
Yeah.
surgery master.
Yeah.
Prior to that, we couldn't have a conversation about See.Hear.Now because we didn't know
what the hell was going on.
what was going to happen. So
Yeah.
that made perfect sense that you're
Yeah.
like, there's no point in
Yeah.
having this conversation, which
Yeah.
it was absolutely right. What was that? What was the anxiety around knowing whether this something that big is going to happen or not, and you're months away?
My partner, H.M. Wallman, was just here. He's been living in Kauai for 16 months, and he came back to the East Coast, and he came down. He was here Saturday night and yesterday. And him and I were walking down the boardwalk. And I said, do you remember the conversation that you and I had of saying, like, from where it was like, we'll be lucky if we can get this thing done in 18 months, because that would have been the timeline of when we could be able to fire up. Would be September 2021. Yeah. And I said, we're going to be able to keep it together for, you know, what's the next 18 months going to look like? You know, are we going to stay healthy? You know, like, that's, never mind work. Like, we went through some hairy shit around here, man. Like, I think a lot of people, they don't want to they don't want to talk about it. I know a lot of people don't want to talk about it because it's over and we just got out of something really bad. But, you know, hopefully people will kind of talk about it. Like, you know, waiting in that line to go to Wegmans. And being, you know, everybody wearing masks and running to a Target, and there was a dude in a Tyvek suit in the parking lot, and he drove there in a Tyvek suit. Fucking head, like, what the fuck? That was crazy. Like, that was nuts. And me trying to sneak, you know, not sneak out of the house, but get out of the house during daylight hours and just go walk. You know, like leave my house on 4th Avenue and just like walk to Deal and then walk back on the ocean, on the beach, and then walk back up, and then like having the boardwalk closed and not being able to walk on the boardwalk, and then like, you know, kind of like curfew, and like it was weird, man. Strange.
A lot of deep breaths.
Yeah, it was. And in that time, too, my mother was in a nursing home with dementia. And she was, at that time, she was in a small facility with 18 people. And 10 of them died. And she had it, but remained asymptomatic the whole time. So here's like her little girl gang of little old ladies with Alzheimer's and dementia that they were the funniest little ladies together. And, you know, they were elbow to elbow and they died. So not being able to see her and the stress of that and the inability to work and, you know, see what was going to happen and just, you know, it was heavy, man. It was really heavy. So, are we going to have, you know, there were so many questions. There's so many what ifs, so many hypotheticals, you know, and the one thing about me, I hate dealing with hypotheticals, what ifs, and like, that's why I hate sports radio, right? Because sports radio, half of it is all arguing about make-believe shit, right?
That's the only thing to talk about.
It's the only thing
or
to talk
half,
about.
It's half
yeah,
of what
but
to
you know
talk
what I mean?
about.
It's just make-believe shit. Like, what would happen? The next thing you know, people are fucking arguing about something that's completely hypothetical and not real, right? But it was just like, you know, being able to take a deep breath and just kind of just monitor the situation and like, you know that at least in New Jersey, in this part of the world, people are educated. And they're going to trust science, and they're going to trust because they had science class or, you know, because, you know, hey, New Jersey, say what you want, probably the best public education for, you know, public schools in the nation, hands down. Like, seriously, like, in the grand scheme of things, you grew up in New Jersey, you shouldn't be a dumbass because you got a good education. Like, seriously, and plus there's no excuse to be a dumbass in 2021 anyway. There's no excuse for it anymore. But so just kind of having that going, like, okay, at least the Northeast may be the first thing to open up. At least people are paying attention. At least people are taking it seriously. Then the vaccinations came out and the numbers were pretty good. And then it was like, okay, maybe we're going to get to this critical mass. And it's like, okay, we're not going to get to this critical mass, but the virus is down. And just like, dude, it was a numbers game. I still get my coronavirus tracker every morning in my email as soon as I wake up from the New York Times to see what it is.
Tim,
So,
I live with the coronavirus tracker. My wife's an epidemiologist.
Yeah.
I go to bed next to the tracker every night. You'd
night.
be insane. It's a good thing. No sleepovers in our room because you don't like hypotheticals.
No.
My wife's got like a web of hypotheticals.
I know.
She's a smart lady, and I love that. And she's been what a guide for me and many, many other people. She got on some boards, did some shows, and was an educator.
Yeah.
Especially in a time when the education seemed to be distilled through media, which is bullshit, and through politicians, which is also bullshit.
Yeah.
So if you just know someone who's actually a scientist, that's great. I plugged her into so many people.
Yeah.
But it, you know, your head's spinning with all the numbers, and it gets a little OCD with it too, obsessing over the numbers.
Well, it was politicized too, and it's like, you know, life or death. Man, I didn't want to get into that. I don't fucking want to go back there. You know, just how. Oh man, misinformation, or twisting information to fit your value system,
which is a classic move by you know, politicians, charlatans, and salespeople alike.
Yeah.
Maybe there's no difference between those three things. Many times.
Yeah, it's like, you know, I've got like a spidey sense when it comes to that shit, man. It's like, I grew up on the Seaside Boardwalk, man. I know if you're full of shit within the first 30 seconds I meet you, man. Because I'm the guy who's supposed to be running the game on you. Because that's what I was taught working those games. You know what I mean? Like, obsessive situation. It's like, you know, sometimes I wish I was a cop. Because I'm like, that guy, look at that guy. Load at this guy over here. Who does he think he is? What do you think he's getting away with over here? You know?
I don't want you on the beat, dude. No, fuck that.
No, they wouldn't want me on there anyway.
You might have been canceled by now.
Yeah, for sure.
What's something Sea.Hear.Now either is doing that you're like, fuck, I'm super stoked that we're doing this, or that you want to do with it?
I mean, right now, we're just stoked we're having a show. It is simple as that, man. It is as simple as that, you know, Pearl Jam is back. You know, they stuck with us through this whole thing. We're able to add the Smashing Pumpkins. Patti Smith is still with us. Patti Scalfa is still with us. Billy Idol is still with us. You know, they didn't drop off. Some of the bands we added, really excited about. The local acts I'm stoked to give that platform to, from I think the Happy Fits from North Jersey are a great band of really young upstart indie rocker kids. You put a cello in an alternative rock band and you play like a stand-up bass as well, I'm in. Do something different. Go for it, And then, all the way down to like the locals like Jackson Pines. I've known those kids forever, man. I've known Joe and Blackie since they're barely 20 years old. So being able to get them on there too is, so exciting. Joe Michelini, same thing from Tom's River, and Anthony, Remember Jones, Anthony and I are friends. So it's good to, and plus too, with like, when it comes to the local stuff too, there is kind of like a gauge of when we select local acts and New Jersey acts.
Talk about that.
In particular. So, Remember Jones is on the road. Road dog. 15 people in a van. Sleeping, farting in the van, toughing it out, eating bad food. Brick and mortar kids, same thing. If you're on the road and you're touring and you are flying that Asbury Park and New Jersey flag and representing us and being ambassadors of what this place is, man, I want you on Sea.Hear.Now. I really do. Because you're slugging it out, you're doing it, you're going for it, you're living it, you're working it, you're breathing it. So come home and play on the big stage. If you're not playing out in the area and you're a really good musician and you do really well locally, I'm stoked for you. That's really good. Keep doing it. You're a professional. You're making money. That's great. Right on. Keep slugging it out. Bring your love someplace else. Go to Pittsburgh. Play Philadelphia. Play New York City. Play up in Burlington, Vermont. Everybody, here's the thing too. If you're a band from Asbury Park now, people know where it's from. They know where it is. But Bruce and Southside and those guys, nobody gave a fuck they were from Asbury Park. They had to go to New York and they had to pay to play in New York City because they weren't booking any bands from Asbury in New York City. So there was this thing that Bruce and Southside and Little Steven and those guys kind of built in building the Asbury Park, New Jersey music brand. And Bon Jovi kind of snapped it a little bit, whatever. But, the Gaslight guys and the Souls in particular kind of took that mantle, and then it just went to the next generation, and it's so on. And that's what makes a music scene, is having these bands be ambassadors. Like, hey, Donnelly, your kids from Asbury are playing my club tonight in New Orleans. They were the nicest guys ever. I love hearing that. I love hearing that X band is playing in Chicago at the side door or something, and people that we know just in the business. It's good. It's great. Nicole Atkins, living in Nashville. She's like the queen of East Nashville now because of who she is and how hard she worked to get there. And so, Danny Clinch has this saying, and it's just so true. The harder I work, the luckier I get. And I think that's a great motto for bands, for local bands. I really do. I think that's a great motto. Work hard, man. Work hard and get out of here.
We're gonna leave it at that, man.
Yep.
That's sage advice for any profession. But
Yep.
We're here talking about art and music and the ocean. Yeah, there's no such thing as luck. You can grind and work hard and things will come. Be patient. The 10-year plan. Malcolm Gladwell.
Yeah.
Tim Donnelly, thanks so much for coming on the show, man. I'm really stoked that you finally got here.
Thanks, dude. I'm happy to be here, and what's going on this block on Lake Avenue and what Leadersdorf and the crew at Lake House have been able to do, and it just being a beacon of bringing other great businesses around you guys, and the rising tide lifting all boats kind of theory. And it's just really good to see, and happy to be a part of it.
I'm happy to be a part of it too.
Yep.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.